What should you do if you're a parent and you want to see your children, but the other parent is not allowing it or is at least making it extremely difficult? Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Robert Larson. I'm an attorney and I'm also the owner of the Larson Law Office in Mesa, Arizona. And I've been practicing in family law for over 15 years now. And I also do estate planning. And so I have a lot of experience with this kind of situation. And this is a scenario that comes up a lot. Sometimes I joke that this is basically half of family court, or one parent is not allowing the other parent to see the children. And it's frequently the mother who is keeping the children from the father, but it can be the other way around as well. So even though that is the most common thing that we see, it can go both ways. So what to do in that situation? Well, first of all, my main advice I would give to somebody would be to get into court, because if you can't resolve things amicably without court involvement, you should get into court as quickly as possible. Because first of all, if you're not seeing your children, or at least your time is being extremely limited with them, then the longer that goes on, the worse it's going to be for them and for you. And when you do eventually end up in court, it's going to be more difficult to get equal rights or appropriate rights with your children when you haven't had that relationship with them. And it's a situation where a judge could eventually look at your case and say, yeah, it was the other parent's fault. They wrongfully withheld the kids from you, but it doesn't really matter because it's been a couple of years and you haven't seen your children, and therefore you need to reestablish that relationship. And so you end up in a situation where you have to spend a lot of time trying to get to know your children again, even if it wasn't your fault, because that's how family courts look at it. The judge in the family court isn't just looking at who's wrong or who's to blame for certain things. They're looking at what's best for your children. So if you haven't had any contact with your children for 6 months or a year or more, that's a problem, regardless of whether the judge thinks the other parent is at fault or not. So the first thing I would say is get into court as quickly as you can and get in front of a judge. And I would even, in most situations like that, I would even recommend that you ask for temporary orders. So that's a situation where if you're going through a divorce or a custody case, that could easily take 6 months, 8 months, a year, sometimes even more than a year. But if you ask for temporary orders here in Arizona, that requires the judge to get you in the courtroom with an evidentiary hearing, meaning a hearing where you get to present your testimony and evidence, and where the judge has to make a decision within 60 days. So especially if you're not seeing your children at all, or your access is being extremely limited, then you probably need to get that established right away so that you don't go through your court case for a year and end up in a trial where you end up with that same situation like I was talking about a minute ago, where you haven't seen your kids for a year. And even if the judge thinks that the other parent is at fault, or at least partly at fault, it doesn't change the fact that you've lost a lot of the relationship that you had with your children, and especially the relationship that you could have had with your children by that time if you'd gotten into court sooner. So that's my first advice, is get into court and ask for temporary orders if that's necessary. The second thing I would say is, it sounds so simple and basic that you may not even think that it's necessary, but this comes up a lot. And the second thing is ask to see your children, and do it in a way that's polite and amicable, and do it in a way that can be proven later on. So that would be a text message or email. You want to be able to prove in court later on that you actually did ask to see your children, because you'd be amazed at how many times we have a situation like this where one parent, like I said, it's usually the father, and they're saying that, hey, the mother's not letting me see the children. And then the judge says, okay, well, mother, what's going on? And the mother will say, well, he never asked. And sometimes that's true, and there may be a good reason for it. Like if you ask to see the children and the mother says, no, I'm not going to allow the children to spend time with you, it might seem natural to stop asking because she's already given her answer. Unfortunately, in court, that would look bad for you, because basically the mother's able to say, well, he didn't ask. He didn't ask to see the children, so it's not me saying no, it's just him not trying. And so she can kind of turn that around on you if you don't ask. And so if you have those text messages or emails where you don't want to do it too often, because it doesn't want to seem like harassment, but you want to do it on a regular basis where you politely ask to see the children. And because that gives her 3 options. One option is she can say yes, and then you see your children, and so that's fine. Second option is she says no, and that's not what you want, but it is something you can use in court against her later on. Then the third option is she ignores you, and once again, you can present that in court, and it's something you can use against her. So those are the two things that I would mostly recommend to people, or I've recommended to hundreds of people over the years. One is get into court and get in front of a judge as quickly as possible to eliminate the damage or reduce the damage as much as possible. And two, ask to see your children, because then that way there's a record of it so that it can't be used against you that you weren't trying to see the children. Now, what if you're on the other side and you're keeping the kids from the other parent, but you believe you have good reasons for it? In that situation, again, communication is very key. I would advise someone in that situation, and I've done it many times, to explain why you're making it difficult for them to see the children, or why you're restricting their time or not allowing any time. Because when you don't have court orders, you don't really have anything to go off of. So you always want to be reasonable, and if there's a reason why you're keeping the kids from the other parent, you should explain that, so that when you get into court, the other parent can't just say to the judge, she's just keeping the kids from me without any reason. And you'd be able to show a record, whether it's email or text message or whatever it is, where you're explaining this is why and this is what needs to be fixed to make it better and get rid of the problem. And it could be that you're offering to allow the other parent, him or her, to see the children under certain circumstances or whatever it is. But you want to make sure that you address your concerns and make it clear to them so that they can't go into court later on and say that they never gave you any information, that you never explained to them why you were keeping the kids from them and what needed to be done to stop that from happening. And so there's never any perfect answer for that kind of situation, but you at least want to be able to explain why you're doing what you're doing, and that way when a judge sees it later on, there's a record of you explaining it. So anyway, it's a lot more complex than everything I can explain in a video, but I did want to explain at least a couple of things that I would typically advise people from both perspectives of this scenario where one parent's not being able to see the children. And so obviously, if you'd like more information, you can give me a call, or you can consult with another attorney, whether you're the parent who feels like you need to keep the kids from the other parent, or whether you're the parent who's not getting to see the kids. I'd be happy to discuss that with you if you're interested. And if not me, then find another attorney who can consult with you, because every situation is unique, and any specific advice would depend on your specific circumstances. So anyway, if you like this video, please make sure to like it below and subscribe so that you can get more in the future. And if you have any comments, please let me know. I'll be happy to respond.